Happy Friday! Welcome back to Drinking by My Shelf. My name is Emma and I have come up with the formula for my perfect book. And this is where you come in. I need you to find it for me. What I've actually done here is come up with 4 different formulas for 4 of my favourite types of books. But there has got to be at least one book out there that combines all of these things. And if anyone's going to know what that book is, it's you lot. Let's start with category number 1, and I am nicknaming this category the low-key epic. These books are epic in scope. They span huge periods of time, I mean not huge periods of time, they span many years of time, but they're not epic in plot. These books are cozy. These books are about ordinary people living ordinary lives. Relatively ordinary. Some of them are kind of eccentric and absurd. Books that fit this category include Early Morning Riser by Katherine Heiny. This is about a group of friends living in a small town. It's got very Gilmore Girls vibes. Our main character is a woman who wasn't raised in this town. She moved to town. She instantly fell in love with Duncan, who is like the town womanizer. He's charming and delightful. He's a very good person, but he has slept with every woman in the extended area, and Jane is just instantly head over heels for him. And we follow their lives over the next 17 years as they all move in and out of each other's lives in different ways. It's really funny. It's got this very dry humour. It's really moving a lot of the time. Some very sad things happen to these characters, but it's mostly about this kind of community and this love that they feel for each other. Even while sometimes they hate each other, there are feuds that go on. It's just a delight to read. And one of the things that you'll notice in all of the books I'm going to talk about in this category, a lot of the action in this book takes place off screen, and I've realised that that's something I really enjoy in a book. Because we're spanning almost 2 decades of these people's lives, we can't follow them every step of the way, and so sometimes you'll get this build-up, something clearly is about to happen, then you get a time jump, and sometimes it takes you a few pages for the author to drip feed you some information about what actually happened after this big build-up, this thing that you thought was going to happen. We've now jumped forward 5 years. What's changed? What's new? Still Life by Sarah Winman is another book that I read this year which fits into this category. This book spans, I think, about 50 years, or maybe more than 50 years. I think it might span 100 years if you include some flashbacks and stuff. And again, it's about an eccentric cast of characters. Our main character is Ulysses, who we first meet when he is a soldier. He's in Italy in 1944, and he has this bizarre night where he meets an older woman called Evelyn, who is an art historian, and she is there with a woman. Are they lovers? They are lovers, but they also kind of hate each other. Either way, Evelyn is a hilarious arty lesbian. Ulysses is a very gentle soldier, and they bond over art, and they have this night together. And we then follow mostly Ulysses throughout the next few decades of his life, and something happened to him while he was in Italy, which becomes relevant later on. So we see him back at home living in the East End of London with his ex-wife who works at a pub, and they have this group of friends who work there, and something happens to bring a group of these friends back to Italy. And Evelyn sort of weaves closer and closer to being part of their lives again. This book is very whimsical. The cast of characters is completely eccentric. It includes things like a parrot who quotes Shakespeare and is able to feel emotions like embarrassment. It's definitely a kind of heightened sort of reality, and the book equally covers really mundane parts of ordinary life and these huge dramas that happen, and a lot of it is based on true events that have happened over the last few decades, over the last 100 years. One Day by David Nicholls is slightly different from those last 2 books in that this doesn't have a huge cast of characters. It really has 2 characters. They're called Emma and Dexter, and we meet them on the night of their graduation from uni, which is when they meet each other, and we then check in with them on the same day every year throughout the next few decades of their life. So what it does have in common is that sweeping period of time. It also has in common the fact that so much of the action happens off screen, because we only ever meet up with them on that one day, that same day every year. And so everything else that happens in the other 364 or 5 days of the year, we don't get to witness it. We just have to play catch up with it when we see them again. And I love that. I think it's such a clever technique. So for this category, I'm going to say the things that I particularly love are the sweeping long periods of time, the action taking place off screen. I think it makes you as the reader do a lot of emotional work, and I really like that. And then in particular, I love the books with these big eccentric cast of characters, but it's not a must because this kind of thing works really well as well. Before I move on to category 2, I would like to thank the sponsor of today's video, this light that you can see behind me that makes all of my reading possible in the first place. This is my Sirius light. You may have seen this light in a few videos before, and I'm going to rave about it to you once again. The best news is that if, while I'm talking, you get super excited and realize that you also want your own Sirius light, well, I have got a really good offer code for you. If you use the code DBMS12, so that stands for Drinking by My Shelf 12, then with every purchase of one of these Sirius lights, you will get your own compact light. So that's any light in the whole Sirius lights range, you will get your own free compact light, which are really lovely little bedside table lights, for example. So what is so amazing about this light? This light, if you are a big reader and you are spending hours of your day reading books like I do, this light will change your life because this light is so good for your eyes. No more straining in the dark. Essentially, it recreates what it is like to read in daylight. The lights themselves are super customizable, which is really fun. So you can choose the color, you can choose the size, you can choose whether you want them to have to plug into a wall, or you can choose the one that I've got, which is cordless, so I can carry this baby around with me wherever I go. I take it into the bathroom with me a lot. I also have good news for a lot of you because in the past when I've talked about these lights, some of my international viewers have commented saying that they are interested but they didn't know if they could get it internationally. So I've spoken with the team. Yes, you can get free international shipping when you buy these lights, and you also don't have to worry about it having a UK plug. The lights can be manufactured with a US plug, for example. So do have a look in my description box. You can find the link there to click through and buy your own light from the Sirius Lights range. And of course, do use DBMS12 as an offer code to get yourself a free compact light. Category number 2, I am dubbing the Evelyn Hugo formula. I feel like that's the best shorthand for you to understand what I mean. And of course, that is named after The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I absolutely love the format of this book. So it is dual timeline. In present day, we follow a young journalist called Monique. She's relatively junior in her career, and she, for some reason, has been exclusively invited to meet this legendary Hollywood actress called Evelyn Hugo, who has been incredibly private, has never told her life story before, but is now ready to tell her story. And for some reason, Evelyn Hugo has chosen Monique as the journalist that she wants to tell her story to. So we followed that in present day, but we also get to go back and actually hear Evelyn Hugo's story of becoming this actress in old Hollywood. We follow her career from the 50s through to the 80s. We get to learn a lot about the movies that she made, the fame she achieved, the way that the media kind of set out to destroy her, the sexism she faced, the abuse she faced, and of course, what she is most famous for, the 7 husbands that she married along the way. I absolutely love this format. I love the dual timeline. I love the fictional fame that we get to hear about, this world that feels so real, since I love books about fictional, famous people. I love the format of this famous person telling their story for the first time, and that we get to know both the woman telling her story and the woman that she is telling her story to, the way that we learn what the connection between these two characters actually is, because Monique is very confused why she has been chosen. There is a reason. And in this book, as well as having 7 husbands, Evelyn Hugo did have one more love of her life, who was not a man, and you know, I love a sapphic romance. A really similar book that I actually read before Evelyn Hugo was The 13th Tale by Diane Setterfield. So this follows such a similar format, and I actually don't know if Taylor Jenkins Reid has ever read this book, but it feels like it might have been her inspiration. So in this one, we once again have a famous, reclusive person, but this time it's a novelist instead of an actress, who has never told her life story. Vida Winter is this famous novelist, and she has been interviewed about her life many, many times, and she always completely makes something up different every time, so everyone knows she's just lying. But she has finally allowed someone to write her true biography, and she has chosen our main character, Margaret, I forgot her name there. She has chosen Margaret to write her biography, and Margaret does not know why she has been chosen. So again, we get that same format. We get the dual timeline. We get to know Vida and this incredible like gothic past that she has. Her story is like so good for fans of like Jane Eyre style of classics. It's amazing. So you get to hear her story. You get to know her now in the present as this woman who has lived through all of this, and you get to know Margaret as the woman who this story is being told to and whose job it is to reinterpret this story and tell it in a new way, and you get to learn about the surprise connection between them. Then came along The Confession by Jessie Burton. Once again, this book hit my perfect formula. Once again, this is about a famous novelist called Constance. Constance Holden is a reclusive novelist who withdrew from the public eye at the height of her fame back in the 80s, and nobody knows why. Back in the 80s, Constance had been this writer. She had met a younger woman called Elise, and the two of them had fallen in love, started to build a life together, and when Connie's fame had really started taking off and one of her books was being adapted into a Hollywood movie, Connie and Elise both move over to LA to oversee this film being produced. But Constance gets really sucked into this world of Hollywood glamour, and Elise finds herself kind of floundering on the outside of this. So in present day, Constance is now this very elusive figure, and we also meet a young woman called Rose, whose mother has been missing ever since Rose was a baby, and all Rose knows is that Constance was the last known person to have seen her mother, and so Constance might hold the answer to what happened to her. So that's why this one is kind of a reverse of the other two I mentioned. In the other two, it's the famous person who chooses who's going to tell their story for reasons unknown to that person. This is the other way around. Rose knows that Constance might have the key to finding out what happened to her mother, and so she disguises herself and she goes and gets a job working for Constance. So she's the one who knows the connection between them, and Constance is sort of tricked. But once again, you get all those things I love: the dual timelines, the depictions of fame, the way that these two timelines come together. Any element of one person telling their story to another person and seeing how stories can be told differently over time. I've got one more in this category, which is Great Circle by Maggie Shipstead. This one has got several layers of that reinterpreting of stories that I loved so much. And it also kind of fits with some of what I was talking about from the first category, in that this book spans an enormous period of time. In one timeline, you follow the life of a fictional famous female pilot called Marion, who is this sort of Amelia Earhart figure. So what is known about her is that in 1950 she set out to fly a great circle around the globe, but she never quite made it. The plane and her body was never recovered, so nobody knows exactly what happened. At one point, her journal was recovered, and so we are able to read some of her own words about her journey. This journal was then the inspiration for a popular book, and that book is now being adapted into a movie, and the part of Marion is being played by this Hollywood starlet who's a sort of Kristen Stewart figure who has been disgraced for having an affair with one of her co-stars. So this one is really so much about the different ways that Marion's story is being told and who owns this story, who is able to tell this story, and what the different versions along the way mean about the person telling those stories, more so really than about the person they're about. It's slightly different from the first three that I mentioned, but I think it still fits into that category. It's got the storytelling, it's got the fictional fame, it's got the multiple timelines. I will say that a book I thought was going to fit perfectly into that category was Plain Bad Heroines by Emily M. Danforth, and I'm sure a lot of you were about to recommend it. I have read it and it was disappointing to me. I didn't love it. I absolutely loved the first half. I thought it was going to be a 5-star read. It kind of went off the rails for me. But do recommend things like that, because it definitely fits the category. Category number 3 is a fairly simple one: twisty thrillers that really make you think. I've picked out 2 here. There are so many more that I could have included. These 2 are very different from each other. So I've got 3 Hours by Rosamund Lupton, which is a super, super tense thriller. It spans 3 hours of time, and it's about a school shooting in England, where that's incredibly rare. And it just follows those 3 hours in which the terrorists whose identities are unknown are active in the school. There is twist after twist after twist in this book. It is very plot heavy. However, what makes this book so good isn't the plot, it's the characters and how thought-provoking that was. I don't want to say too much because obviously spoilers, but when the cause of this attack is revealed, it taps into a much bigger, wider issue, and I found it really thought-provoking. You also get to meet a lot of different characters along the way in this story, and the characters were, for me, really fully formed. I really cared about them, and so while it is a very, very plot-heavy book, it is a character focus that is why I fell in love with this book. Miracle Creek by Angie Kim is a very different kind of book. This is more of a court drama, and I need to reread this one because it's been a few years. I loved it so much. It's about a family who run an experimental medical treatment centre, which is very controversial. So in the book, they get protesters outside all the time, and then there is a disaster one day at this treatment centre, and several people die and several are injured in a really horrific way. It's not a fun scene to read. Why am I laughing? I think just to recover from how stressful I found that. The book is about the trial that comes out of this event, and once again, it's really twisty, it's really page-turning, there is so much going on, you're really hooked on this, but the real reason the book is so good is about the characters. It's not really about the trial, it's not even about the result of the trial, it's about everyone involved, it's about their relationships with each other, it's about the way that this trial affects them, it's about the way that, so this particular family are a family of immigrants, and it's about their place within the community and how that led them to this situation. It's really fantastic. So thrillers that are focused on the characters and that give you a lot to think about. And finally, my fourth category, which will surprise precisely no one, time travel. I love time travel in books, but particularly I love time travel that is done in an unusual way. So before the coffee gets cold, this whole series, I've got here book number 3, Before Your Memory Fades. This is a time traveling cafe, and the time travel has so many rules. The book is really quirky and whimsical, and it makes you cry, and it's not a sci-fi book about time travel at all. Time travel is used as a device to explore wistfulness and regret and memory. Sea of Tranquility, one of my favourite books that I read this year by Emily St. John Mandel. Time travel in this, how to explain it? This book is about an anomaly in time, revealing bigger truths about the universe, and yet it is not a sci-fi feeling novel. Maybe that's an idiotic thing for me to say because I don't particularly read sci-fi, and so I'm not trying to be disparaging, but this is a literary fiction sci-fi book, let's say that. The book takes us through different points in history over a period of several hundred years, going from the past, from our past into our distant future, and it takes you until halfway through the book before you discover the time-travelling link between all of these points in time, and then the book takes us back through them all again. The first 15 Lives of Harry August is really unusual time travel. This one is about people who live their lives on a loop, and so they can pass messages back through time by waiting until they live their whole life and then die and go back to the beginning, and then they pass a message. So this is a very slow form of time travel. Fun to read about, not so fun to live, I imagine. I will stop there because I have already made videos in the past listing all of my favourite time travel books. You don't need to hear them again. I will link below. I made a video for Book Break where I work about time travel. I've made a video on this channel about time travel. You've heard it all before, but just know I love time travel. So now it is over to you. I've given you my 4 categories of perfect books that I like, and my formula for a perfect book would be to combine all of those things. Can it be done? Does anybody know a time-travelling, twisty, character-driven thriller that spans a huge amount of time and also includes some fictional famous people telling their stories to each other? Now that I'm saying that out loud, I actually feel like I have read one. Please hold. The Psychology of Time Travel by Kate Mascarenhas. I did not plan this, I swear, I just thought of it. This is a time-travelling murder mystery. It spans time because time travel inherently does. It has a cast of 4 female scientists who invented time travel and became famous for inventing time travel. One of them in particular became famous for having a mental breakdown after inventing time travel, then withdrawing from the public eye. So we've got famous people, multiple timelines, time travel, thriller, really great characters. There's also some lesbian romance in here. Is this my perfect book? But let me know in the comments, are there more books like this one that combine so many elements from my favourite books? Can you solve the formula for my perfect book? And in the meantime, don't forget to get yourself your serious light, because all of that reading that you're doing as research to find me my perfect book, you're going to want one of these to light the page. Thank you very much again to Serious Readers for sponsoring this video. Once again, you can click the link in my description box to go and browse their range of serious lights, and you can use my code DBMS12 to get yourself a free compact light with any purchase of a serious light. I'm now just going to sit here and let all of your suggestions for my perfect book roll in. So enjoy your Fridays, I will be here waiting.
Nothing like your smile in the morning, following the linings on